All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Semo?
Well, we've got a few topics. This is actually, let me preface this by saying that we did our Wheel of Time on Wednesday, and this is obviously a Friday, which you may see Saturday morning. Uh, but we might do Wheel of Time on Wednesdays anyways because my class schedule is making this really tough.
Yeah,
And I've spent all day reading research papers, which we're going to talk about today to some degree. And it's a lot easier for me to come home from class on Tuesday, read Wheel of Time, which allows me to unwind because it's fiction, and then talk about it on Wednesday and then get back started on school than it was
yeah.
to get back home and try to get ahead on school, which I just spent 12 hours, 11 hours at, and try to then read Wheel of Time. So I think that order might be better. And we're almost done. We probably got about four more Wheel of Time episodes, anyways. And then we'll just bitch and moan about, modern TV and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's important too because I think I've talked about this before. Is Rush Limbaugh used to talk about this a lot because his first job wasn't in radio. He worked in the marketing department for the Kansas City Royals, and he said he always remembered. He doesn't even remember why they brought this guy in, but they brought in some, you know, psychologist type dude to talk to the office people for the team, to motivate them, give them ideas, and help them sell and whatnot. And he's Rush said that I don't even remember who this guy was or why they brought him in or what he was talking about, but he said something that always stuck with me. And when Rush relayed this, it always stuck with me too because like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The reason people don't just love sports, but the reason they need sports or Wheel of Time or some sort of outlet like that is because it is the one thing in life where you can be 100% emotionally invested without a downside.
Yeah. I was about to say without fucking something up. Yeah. Yeah.
Because even in a relationship, even if you have the world's greatest marriage, there's always still a little hesitation there because we're people. And as much as I know, like I tease my wife because we've talked about I think on and offline about how people are awful and sleeping around all over the place. And I drive me and my wife crazy. It's like I don't understand how you could do that, and how that is so much more pervasive than we ever thought. And so I tease her about you're not allowed to go out in public anymore. And I know we know neither one of us are going to stepping out on each other, but there's always that at least some portion of your brain that goes, well, but maybe, what if? Are you sure? Because you can't ever get that to go away, and depending on who you are and the circumstance you're in is how big or small that little piece of your brain that goes, oh, hold on, man, you know. But with sports, ultimately, and this is where people go overboard with it, is when it does start to actually matter. You're 100% emotionally invested, but it doesn't actually matter. It's a game,
Hmm.
you know. For the people on the field and even some of the people in the offices, well, okay, well, yeah, it's also your livelihood, so then it matters more than just a game. But for us fans, it's just a book. It's just a fantasy world. Yeah, it's sad and frustrating that Jordan didn't get to finish it, but ultimately, it's just a book, man.
Tell that
So
to your
it's
fellow Cowboys fans.
yeah. Well, that's we're not off topic here because this is kind of what we're going to get into with the political stuff is that this is why the team sports aspect of politics is so dangerous is because you're throwing yourself into it so fully, so deeply, emotionally, and it does matter. And
Well, let me
because it
let me give
matters,
you a
it's
real
warping our
world
perception.
example.
Yeah.
I'm about to in what it's Friday, so a week and 3 days, 2.5 days. I'm about to root for Joe Mixon because he's a Texan now.
Hmm.
And everybody knows how much that grates inside my head, like nails on a chalkboard, or the Dumb and Dumber scream, the most annoying sound in the world from Dumb and Dumber. Yes, it is there. But when he
That is
makes a good
for
play, I'm
anyone
going
who
to be
doesn't
like,
know,
first
for anyone
down.
who
God,
doesn't know,
somebody
we've
else,
talked
please.
about before that a couple of times now in our fantasy football league, he's been on the board and been probably the best option for you to pick, and you won't pick him
I won't pick him. I
because you
won't
don't want
pick
to
him.
have to root for him.
Now there's
Because
some hope, and this is my hope for this year, and I know it's a very shot in the dark. Sorry, we'll get to the real topics here in a second. But Cam Akers used to be a stud for St. Louis, tore an Achilles, then tore an ACL when he was with Minnesota, and he was just floating on the waiver wire in the free agency, and Houston gave him a chance. And this kid has been a stud all preseason,
Mhm,
and there's a small hope in me that they are like, wow, this guy's really good. Let's like 50-50 the carries. Let's do this. Let's do that. And slowly, we only have Mixon on like a 1 or 2 year contract.
mhm,
And if he comes out and stays injury free and is a stud, he's young. He's only 25. He could just take the starting position. And well, Mixon's the safety valve. There's a chance that could happen, or if it's a 50-50 split or something, because we're going to be a high flying offense. Akers actually fits better into that.
mhm,
So there's a little hope there. But at the same time, when Mixon makes a touchdown or a first down, I'm still going to jump up just like I do for every Houston Texans
mhm,
touchdown that happens, right? So it's uh it's tough, but that's exactly what you're talking about. Behind your team, politics, it matters more. Me, I root for an asshole. Politics, I vote for somebody who could eventually be in charge of our lives. And that's a different game. Marriage, there's actually a proven fact. People see the best in their partner compared to what other people see in that person, even if they don't like them. Even if the marriage is rocky, they still see them better
mhm,
than other people see them. So and that's a positive thing. That is a very positive thing because, kids are hard to raise and you need pair bonding to raise children properly. But uh it's but it matters, as you were saying. It actually matters. Whereas sports, I can be like, yeah, touchdown. And the only thing that changes is a little grumbling under my breath that I wish it was a different player. But my
mhm.
team won. And if they lose, oh, grumble, grumble, grumble next year. I mean, the Browns still have fans. That tells you how powerful uh team sports are. It's
Yeah, yeah. Well, this right before we started recording, my wife asked me if the Rangers had given up, and I was like, "Well, I haven't been paying attention to the news, so I don't know if
didn't they
they
just
were
win it
doing
all
anything
last
with the
year?
deadline or." And they're several games below 500 still, so it's highly improbable they'll make the playoffs. But that's the beauty of sports is that they went on such a late season improbable run, and then they carried that momentum through into the playoffs when nobody was picking them to make the World Series, let alone win the World Series, even after that, because they had to make that late season run and they weren't that great during the season. And they had this incredible, improbable run and got the franchise's first World Series win. And because of that, I'm like, I know it is almost certain they're not going to make the playoffs. But because I'm a fan and
But
because they
because
had that
baseball has
improbable run last
182
year,
games,
162. Come on now.
162. Oh,
Don't be
whatever.
hyperbolic. But
Ooh, by
yeah,
less than
but
10%. All right.
and then there's like 30 something games left. But because of that, it's like, ooh, maybe they could. I mean, it's possible but they're not going to. But it
Okay.
lets you go, ooh, this could happen.
Okay, to the topics though. We're going to talk about woke professors. We're going to talk about RFK backing Trump. We've got a couple videos there, plus a very funny advertisement they put out. And we're going to talk ballots. You brought up Michigan, but it's actually happening in all kinds of places.
There's a lot of
So,
shenanigans going on. Yeah.
yeah. So we're going to talk those three things majorly. One thing, a comment from Isomorphic in our Wheel of Time thing. We will get to it in more detail when we get there, but uh, you talked about the me identifying something wrong with the literature because I hate Gawain. No, it's not because I hate Gawain. That is a thing that is a pet peeve of mine. In fantasy literature or movies and shows, anyways, the whole clean slice of an arm or a
Mm.
leg or something, as you said in your comment, uh, hack for reps. Yeah, you got to hack for reps to really get it done right. And you know, when there's a time when I'm in the mood for like light and fun, and usually I watch anime or something like that. But if I'm like in the epic fantasy mood, I like realism and grit. So,
Mm.
you know, it would have been nicer to be like hack, 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 and then the arm is off or something. But that's just me. So it wasn't Gawain. It's one of my pet peeves with that kind of situation, anyways. So,
It's
but
one of the reasons we like 13th Warrior so much
oh
is
yeah,
because it is
yeah,
so
yeah,
grounded.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so one of the places this is kind of coming from is the last several days, my X feed at least has been blowing up with people on the right losing their minds over Trump statements on abortion and specifically Amendment 4 in Florida because he lives in Florida. So he's a registered voter in Florida, and this is a big deal on the ballot in Florida. But it's also a big deal nationwide because the left and the Harris campaign are trying to make abortion a major part of their platform of scaring people into, if Trump's elected, he's going to institute a federal nationwide ban on all abortions. And it's so much more complicated and ugly than that. But people are losing their ever loving minds and putting on that team jersey and you're a communist sellout traitor if you don't want to vote for Trump because of what he said about Amendment 4. No, you hate babies and you're just as bad as the Democrats and you want to let babies be murdered up until and after birth. If you guys, come on. Can we have a little nuance and can we have some discussions about, hey, life is messy and complicated, so what do we do about this? How do we navigate this?
So I came up with a thought on this, and it was actually listening to Crystal Ball on Breaking Points, and she used the words. It's funny how Trump is throwing his base under the bus with this abortion issue, and that's one way to look at it. And for those that know Crystal Ball, she's extremely left. She's left way left of me even, and I'm the lefty of our group. Uh, but and
Is she
then
on the
there
Hill podcast? Is that
she used to be way
used
back.
to
She
be?
got fired from the Hill because she would refuse. This is why I like her, because she
Oh
refused
yeah,
to
yeah,
back
yeah,
down
yeah.
from her opinions. Her and Sagar, and then her and Sagar started Breaking Point. So he's the conservative and she's the liberal lefty. She's not a liberal. She's the lefty in the group. She's the socialist of the group, and he's the more capitalistic kind of Republican-ish kind of guy. Uh, but she said throwing under the bus his base, and like you said, they're all up in arms about it. And the big thing is he's being political. He's trying to play both sides and all this. And I'm like, after all this time and knowing him in the 90s and in the 80s and all of that, what if this is actually what he believes? No one is throwing that
Mm-hmm.
out there.
Mm-hmm.
What if this is actually what he believes? You know what? I don't like that this is happening. I wouldn't do it myself, but it is something that's already part of our society. And maybe we could reduce it, which is my opinion on it. It should exist, but we should do everything we can to reduce it. But at the same time, it should be a legal right because it's already there. We've already opened up that Pandora's box. We can't take it back now. And what if that's actually what he believes? No one's talking about that. I think it is what he believes because, surprise Republicans, he's not an old school Republican.
It's interesting that you say that because something Steve Deace has been saying the last several weeks is that this election boils down to 1990s New York City versus San Francisco today. And
Yes.
and I think and that is a great way of putting it. That the left, the Democratic
That
Party
might be the smartest thing
so
Steve Dace has ever
uh,
said.
has become so radical. It is San Francisco today. And what Trump represents is really the very centrist Republican Democrat, Northeast. He's a New York City liberal Republican. Which is why Rudy Giuliani is one of his guys. That's what it represents. And so, no, that's not my brand of conservatism. That's not ideal as far as I'm concerned, but it's not insane, people. So can we take a breath?
Which is funny because I used to always say when people would like, "What are you, a Democrat or a Republican?" I'd be like, "Well, I'm a Texas Democrat, but I'm a California Republican." It's like you can't just. That's why the national thing is so absurd because a Texas Democrat is actually probably right of a California Republican, in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, unless you're right in the middle of Austin. Unless you're right in the
So,
middle of Austin, but
and
yeah.
the reason this matters and the reason it's more complicated is, I know I've told you this. I can't remember if I've said it while we were recording, but a little while ago, my wife shocked the kids because somehow the topic of divorce and cheating and affairs and whatnot came up. And my wife made the point that when we first got married, she told me that was a red line deal breaker. If you ever cheat on me, not only are we done, I'm leaving, I'm taking the kids, I'm probably going to stab you on my way out. And she would probably go to my parents' house and I wouldn't be welcome at my own parents' house anymore. Okay. But now she understands, after years of life, she knows that life is messy, people are complicated. And so while it would probably be bad for me, she wouldn't just immediately stab me and take the kids and leave. It would be why, how, what happened, what's going on, because life is messy. And that to me is the analogy for this election of, yeah, that's really bad, especially if you're as hardcore pro-life as someone like me is, of life begins at conception. Okay, that's a big effing deal, but what else is going on? That is to me the most important issue, life, because you can't have any of your other, you know, God-given liberties enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. You can't have those if you don't have life. So to me, that's the most important issue, but it's not the only issue. And abortion, as I've said before, way back when I said I'm leaning heavily towards RFK Jr. because I think he's the most pro-life candidate. Because right now, the life issue is more than just abortion.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it's all the farms and the
it's
chemicals and the
what are we
environmental
doing?
factors that actually affect us, not this
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
boogeyman that's out there. It's all of that. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't like what Trump said on a moral level, and I may go next time. I may pull up the numbers and go into more depth on why, you know, philosophically, I think what he said was bad, but also politically, just tactically, it was stupid. I've talked a little bit about that. Next time I may go deeper and pull up the numbers and why
Yeah, we'll do a
the
whole episode
shouting
on
match
that
is annoying.
because just to
But
refresh everybody, because we did it at the end of the last episode, but most people don't listen to the end of the episode. But Heath is life begins at conception, and I am life begins at cognition. So that's our difference.
mhm.
And that's about a 20-week difference. So, it's a pretty big debate there.
Yeah, it's not
Uh,
small,
yeah,
but
it's not small, but at the same time, it's not cutting babies' heads off on the way out the womb. So,
exactly.
it is. I still believe in some sort of restriction on that, and I would love to see those numbers go way down, anyways. But I think there's a better approach to that. So we'll probably do a whole episode on that.
But
So go
not
ahead
only
and
can we
finish
not
your thought,
talk
and then I'll
about,
give part two of my help Republicans again.
yeah,
So
not only can we not talk about that issue if we're just shouting back and forth at Team Jersey style at each other, but then we definitely can't take a step back and say, hey, what about these other issues? Right. And so where I wanted to start was with RFK Jr.'s speech that we listened to last weekend. Um, with when he, you know, we it was being leaked and we knew it was coming, and then he made this what I thought was one of his best speeches, when he talked about why he's
mhm.
withdrawing from the race and why he's, especially in battleground states, urging his supporters to vote for Trump. And he made a great point there about how undemocratic the Democratic Party has become. And that's not a small issue either. Not if we want to continue, as Franklin said, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. Well, do we want to keep it or not? Because right
Yeah.
now we're acting like we don't want to.
And I've got it queued up. I'll pull it up as soon as I give this thought here. Again, this is another episode of, and I'll try to keep it like within 2 minutes here of Sam is trying to help Republicans here because it's the better option and quit getting in your own way. But abortion is going to be the deal breaker if they lose because there is a huge contingency of especially white female liberals, which we'll talk about when we get to the woke professor discussion. Uh, but I think a Vivek approach to this, if so, Trump has brought on RFK and Gabbard as advisors, and Vivek's been running the stump for him, but he needs to take lessons from Vivek because one thing Vivek does well is ask a question to answer a question.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And the way the Republicans can spin this election cycle is, you want to get rid of abortions. That's not true, but instead of just reacting and saying, no, states, blah, 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 like he's been doing, say, excuse me, ma'am, I really care. Give me a direct answer to this, as Vivek would say. Why is it so important that you're allowed to have an abortion? And they're going to, they'll might him and haw for a minute, but eventually somebody who actually knows their stuff is going to spit out things about how expensive it is to have a child, how expensive healthcare is, how expensive da and it's going to come down to the economy, stupid. And that's a way to bring the abortion debate back to the economy, stupid. And they need to spit that question out as a reaction.
mm-hmm.
It needs to be right there. There should be no defensiveness. There should be no life begins here. There should be none of this. Make it real to the person asking you the question and the people who follow that person. Bring it back to the economy and say, okay, so what if we made it to where those things were less of a concern? Would abortion be as big a priority for you?
Mm-hmm.
And the hardcore people would still say blah, but they're not getting your vote anyways. But a big chunk of people would say, actually, that makes a lot of freaking sense. That's why Vivek is so effective. And I wish he actually had a bigger voice. I wish he was out there on the stage. I wish he was on mainstream media as Trump's uh like spokesman kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, which they're probably not inviting him for that reason. But
I know he would make a great press secretary just because of that, because he is not combative, but he is convincing.
mhm.
So you don't want to, you know, uh deflect or weasel your way out of it, like, well, sock you back to something. You also don't want to straight up lie like the current lady, you know, but
KJP, KJP.
yeah, but you also don't just want to get in there and start throwing bombs, because all that is red meat for people who already agree with you.
Mhm.
And that's where Vivek is so good at dealing with the media and dealing with people who disagree with him, is turning that back on him. In it's one of our frustrations with Jordan Peterson, is he sometimes, because he has been so vilified in the past several years, he has become more combative. And I think his shining moment is still that 5 6 however many years ago that was, I think it was Kathy Newman was her name. The
Kathleen Newman. Yeah, Kathleen
Yeah,
Newman.
the
Yeah.
the the interview on BBC with this, feminist journalist, and he did such a great job of challenging the premise and turning the question back on, well, wait a minute, why do you say this? Why do you think that? What do you mean by this? Rather than just accepting her premise. All right.
I said somebody, I sent you something I thought should be the next press secretary, and I can't remember who I said.
I don't remember, but that rings a bell. But
I know
we
I know we joked about Michael Malice, but that was truly a joke. I mean,
that
it would be
yeah, I
amazing.
remember you said that, and I thought that was hilarious and would be awesome, but no,
Oh,
that would
Nicole
never happen.
Shanahan,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
RFK's technically on certain state ballots VP candidate. But you know what? I was flipping through the messages to get to that, and I saw Chris Cuomo's name up. Actually, that would be a reach across the aisle too. You can get someone like Chris
W-
Cuomo
Well, actually, you brought
as
her up. Do you want to
secretary.
start with that ad then? Because I actually think that this speaks a lot to why we're in the situation we're in on both sides with the shouting at each other is this ad. And I think this is absolutely brilliant, because it's just the right amount of humor, but it's not, going over the top to where it might be offensive, and like put people's backs up, but just a little chuckle,
By the way, I did
let
blue
people get the
check
point.
us. It hasn't come up yet because they do their review board, but yeah, I did blue check us. So distillation at Twitter or X Twix.com. Don't do actually Twix. That won't come up unless they trademark that as well. But X.com, S distillation, that's us. You can probably also do social distillation, but who knows what's going to come up. But Nicole Shanahan shared this. This is a,
Twix.com will take you to the candy bars.
oh, will it?
Yeah, they have their own website. Okay.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Are you or your loved ones suffering from illnesses such as TDS, also known as Trump derangement syndrome? Do you dismiss or deny the current issues facing our country, such as historic inflation, illegal immigration, corporate corruption, World War III escalations, and the chronic disease epidemic?
Pause it
Are
real
you
quick.
willing to elect someone who was the least popular vice?
All right, right off the bat, I love it because the music and the narrator, I feel like I want to go, wait, has this person actually done pharmaceutical commercials? Because this sounds like a pharmaceutical commercial. So you kind of get a double whammy of irony here because this is something RFK Jr. is frequently complaining about is the big pharma commercials.
Isn't that her voice?
Is it? Is
It
that her
sounds like it.
narrating that?
It's
Okay.
yeah, it sounds like if it's not, then it sounds a lot like her. But yeah, no, that obviously was on purpose because that's one of
Mm-hmm.
his
Mm-hmm.
big initiatives is to get those commercials off. And I think it was when he was on Rogan, or no, it was the guy who wrote the book on this, Abraham, something Abraham. He wrote the
I
book
don't know.
on big pharma and
And
how
advertising.
and advertising and how much money they have in
Uh-huh.
there. Uh, I think it's John Abraham. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's right. But he was on Rogan and he was talking about how everything's so happy, but side effects include, you
Mm-hmm.
know, side effects include, incontinence and chronic flatulence and death. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's one of the tactics that just really irks the people who are really activist against this.
Yeah. Well, and you just very quickly you point out all of the, we're 20 seconds in and you've already pointed out these major issues going on, and in a very lighthearted way saying, "Are you ignoring these things?" Because, there's a bit of a chuckle there, but also yeah, a little self-reflection. Are you ignoring these things? Because these are big effing deals.
President in modern history, and who offers no policy or vision for America simply because your brain keeps telling you anyone but Trump? If so, you might be struggling from TDS. Introduce
This commercial was made really quickly because that
Yeah.
wreath was
Yeah.
just the other day.
And that
Yeah.
is, that is a great example because that is, really boiling my blood that it was the 3-year anniversary of the bombing at Abbey Gate, which was the gate by the airport in Kabul, where 13, I believe it was, um, Marines were killed. I think it was like 12 Marines and a Navy corpsman, um, in this bombing, and it was massive failures, not quite on the Trump assassination level of failure, but pretty damn close to that level of incompetence and failure. And the families have repeatedly complained about the response. I mean, one, complained about the administration putting their kids in that position in the first place, and two, then their pretty cold-hearted response to the families. And if I'm not mistaken, in some of those pictures, if you look at those pictures of Trump at Arlington the other day, you'll see a guy who's missing, I think it's right arm, left leg. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the same guy I've seen testifying about the event because he was a Marine sniper stationed there on Overwatch at the gate, and the blast blew off an arm and a leg.
Okay, so I knew because I follow Kamala Harris on Twix. It was that same day in hanging the wreath that her priority was Women's Equality Day marks a monumental step towards the expanding of voting rights. The best way to honor the generations of women who paved the way is to vote and protect our reproductive freedoms at the box. So he's out honoring people who actually died. And she's out trying to get you to be able to kill more people.
And more importantly, the families are the ones who invited him. He didn't invite himself. He didn't set this up. And the left and the TDS right, which is why we're playing this, because there's plenty of TDS on both sides, are trying to make not only make a big deal about this, but they're trying to lawfare this, because there is actually a law that makes it illegal to use national cemeteries for campaigning, except people have been posting numerous times where Biden, among others, have used Arlington, and several months ago, he put out an ad that included images of him at the military cemetery in Normandy that he went to for the anniversary. And so it's also important to remember that those families, those grieving Gold Star families, they wanted Trump there. And the administration, the army, was trying to block it. And it took a call from the Speaker of the House office to say, hey, knock it off. These families want him there. He should be able to be there. And that's why he was there.
Let's continue.
Independence. Independence allows you the freedom to finally think independently once again. Instead of believing everything you hear from the mainstream media, independence allows for constructive critical thinking.
I used to hear people on the news say things like,
Donald Trump and the movement he has encouraged are a threat to democracy.
And I instantly believed it. With independence, I now realize the media is run by the Democrat elite, who are a corrupt oligarchy that censors free speech, silences political opponents, supports forever wars, and abandons democracy.
For those that haven't seen it, Zuckerberg came out and just gave more confirmation that.
I've got that queued up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then let's finish the
like
commercial and we go
there.
to that. Yeah, we'll go to that.
By anointing its candidates.
Independence may not be for everyone. If you enjoy being lied to about your president's cognitive abilities, support Orwellian totalitarianism, or are excited about communist fiscal policy, independence may not be right for you. Common side effects of independence may include an awakening of rational thought, successfully identifying propaganda, freedom.
That Chris Cuomo rant was actually really good too, by the way. So it's worth looking up.
Of choice, loss of hatred, anti-narcissistic behavior, and love of democracy.
I used to blindly hate whoever my party was running against.
Why does he look like, oh God, what's his name? Not Stephen Colbert, not Bill Maher. The other guy that runs the late night stuff. He was the Daily Show guy.
Stewart?
Yeah, Stewart. That guy. Did he not look? Does he not look like?
Yeah,
Stewart?
especially the way he is now, because Stewart's got the white beard going. Yeah.
My party was running against.
I really think people they do these commercials on purpose in real life. Like they look like Harrison Ford or whatever. We talked about that last time.
I didn't care about facts or policy because I was hopelessly indoctrinated. With independence, I'm much more interested in policies that uphold democracy. Awesome. And I truly care about the health of our country and its citizens.
Ask your doctor if independence is right for you, and enjoy your freedoms once again.
Fantastic ad. That was
yeah,
almost as good as the old school Robert F. Kennedy ad that invoked John F. Kennedy during the Super Bowl.
Yeah. It reminded me of Ron Paul's farewell speech. The most surprising thing to him about being a politician is he never thought it would be so much work to sell. He never thought he'd have to sell liberty to people, but you do, because we are often lazy and short-sighted, and the reason there is that quote of people who would sell liberty for a little temporary safety deserve neither is because it's true. And that quote goes back centuries, because it's true, because that is our inclination. That is, we can rationalize the easy way of, well, I'll finish off this box of donuts and I'll start eating clean tomorrow. No, because if you finish off that box of donuts, you're just giving into that mentality and you're going to keep perpetuating it. So tomorrow there's going to be something else that says, well, my knee hurts a little bit and I won't be able to, so I'll rest it up. And then the next day comes, and then the next day comes, and then the next day comes. And, it's one of the reasons I think that ad is so freaking effective. Beyond just the basic point of, guys, you're letting your vitriolic hatred of one individual, fueled by all of these people with vested interests that are yelling at you and telling you that you must hate this one individual, you're letting that emotion rule your life, and you're ignoring, World War III is on the horizon. Swarms of people coming across the border. You've got the latest story now is of this Venezuelan gang taking over whole apartment blocks in
God,
rural Colorado. And
migrants boarding school buses in California.
I just went to the grocery store the other day and got a small cart full of groceries that not that long ago would have been about $60 and was a little over $100. That's not good, man. And we're ignoring all of that because of one dude that we like or dislike too much. And it's driving me nuts. And the flip side to this, though, is that also is driving me nuts, is there is a pro TDS. The what they're talking about, the more vitriolic and rampant is the anti TDS.
Idiots like Cat Turd and stuff.
But there is that pro TDS of, you are so deranged for your love of Trump that you refuse to hold him accountable, and you viciously attack anyone who says, dude, that is not a nuanced position, you're just straight up pro-choice. Which is what some people were saying after his comments on Amendment 4 is, and there were some that were saying, that's it, I'm done, I am not voting for Trump. But then there were others who were, why are you making it so hard for me to vote for you? This is not a good position, morally or politically. Like Eric Erickson, who used to run Red State, and he's a Georgia guy and a radio host, and people were going after him hard. And he didn't even, he wasn't one of these, Trump is dead to me, I refuse to vote for him guys. He's just saying, this is not a good stance morally or politically. And people were just roasting it. I'm like, he didn't say anything that you don't believe. You just are angry because he's attacking your guy. But if Mitt McCain would have said what Trump said, you would have joined in on the roasting. And you would have been right to. So maybe we should take a breath and calm down, people.
Wait, hold on. Is this the same Eric Erickson that, yeah, here we go. Yeah. Is this the same Eric Erickson is he still even alive? That started psychosocial theory?
No.
He was,
no, this is a political pundit.
He was a protege of Freud's wife.
No. This is a Georgia political pundit.
I just looked it up. He's still alive. Yeah. So I was like, Eric Erickson from psychosocial theory?
No. Totally different worlds here, man.
Basically, he took Freud's, the one I'm talking about, took Freud's psychoanalytic theory and added a social component to it. So he integrated the social roles with the psychoanalytic.
Mhm.
So it might be one of the most inclusive, word used correctly, inclusive psychological theories there is today. So I was like, Eric Erickson, what the hell?
No, just this happens to be the same name.
Just
I that
So was his father Eric? Because then he would be Eric's son. That's how it used to work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
Did I
my
derail you?
biggest
Sorry.
concern though is my same concern with the RFK speech that I thought was so good but is it going to break through the noise? Is it going to break through to enough normies that they'll say, oh yeah, that's a good point. You know, we were talking about this, we listened to RFK Jr.'s speech, and then we listened to Tim Pool talking about it, and they were going back and forth, and we were kind of going back and forth with it of, you know, wow, this is a big deal because the name Kennedy still carries a lot of weight with a lot of people. And who was it was saying, well, yeah, but, and it was like a mom or someone who was an older kind of more traditional Democrat, and it was, I don't remember if it was his guest or one of his usual panel guys, because I don't watch Pool as much as you do.
That was a guest, because the other one was Hannah Claire, and
Yeah.
she's
Oh,
the
it was the gay black guy, wasn't it?
yeah, the gay black guy.
Libertarian black guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, and he was saying that, you know, early on, he asked mom, what do you think about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? And the media had already gotten to her and already painted him as an absolute kook. And he was going, geez, this is, this is someone who was a believer in the myth of Camelot. And she was already swayed by the relentless onslaught of, this guy is a nut, this guy is a kook.
No, it was even worse than that, because he brought up the story about her talking well about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and all the good things he's doing
previously. Yes.
Yeah, and then it was
election.
basically overnight
Yeah,
that the media smearing got through her, and she's like, oh, he's a kook, and da 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 da. So yeah, and this is something that my mom, if I've said so before, was like a 70s hippie, late 60s 70s hippie, and she was been a lifelong Democrat her whole life. Her father was a lifelong Democrat. He voted for the New Deal since it happened. So he's been a lifelong Democrat his whole life, but he was a union guy, and so it kind of continued for different reasons, because she was a flower child, and we were talking about stuff, and she was huge behind Hillary in 2016, and we had discussions, and she would get that sneer in her voice when she would say Trump. She would say it like that. She wouldn't like just say Trump. She would say Trump. And I pointed that out to her one time, and we were talking, and she's like, I noticed it. The last time I said it, I noticed it. You were right, that I do change my voice when I say the word Trump. And then we were talking about other things, and I'm like, actually, I kind of like RFK. She was like, oh, really? Tell me more, because I don't know nothing. I don't know anything about RFK, because you don't get it from the news.
No, you've got to be plugged into the alternative media, or nothing about RFK.
Yeah, and she was like, "Oh, that actually sounds pretty good. I might look more into that." And it sucks that he had to drop out, but at the same time, it was at least one person that was influenced by just discourse, and we didn't get enough of that. And the guy you're talking about, his mom got the opposite of that. She got the vitriol, and it just hit. It just stuck. It's so easy to control people these days, because we have so much stimulus.
Yeah,
and we're all subject to our stimulus. Which ones do you let in? I don't know.
Well, let's play a little bit of this from the beginning, because I think this
it's
was
only 2.5 minutes, so we might go through it. You just tell me when to pause.
And a U.S. president colludes with or outright coerces media companies to censor political speech. It's an attack on our most sacred right of free expression. And that's the very right upon which all of our other constitutional rights rest. President Biden mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide in the Russian elections, observing that Putin and his party controlled the Russian press and that Putin prevented serious opponents from appearing on the ballot. But here in America, the DNC also prevented opponents from appearing on the ballot. And our television networks expose themselves as Democratic Party organs. Over the course of more than a year in a campaign where my poll numbers reached at times in the high 20s, the DNC-aligned mainstream media networks maintain a near perfect embargo on interviews with me. During his 10-month presidential campaign in 1992, Ross Perot gave 34 interviews on mainstream networks.
That's 33 more than Kamala Harris so far.
In contrast, during the 16 months since I declared, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN combined gave only 2 live interviews from me. Those networks instead ran a continuous deluge of hit pieces with inaccurate, often vile, pejoratives and defamatory smears. Some of those same networks and colluded with the DNC to keep me off the debate stage. Representatives of those networks are in this room right now, and I'll just take a moment to ask you to consider the many ways that your institutions have abdicated this really sacred responsibility, the duty of a free press to safeguard democracy and to challenge always the party in power. Instead of maintaining that posture of fear, skepticism toward authority, your institutions have made themselves government mouthpieces and stenographers for the organs of power. You didn't alone cause the devolution of American democracy, but you could have prevented it.
Yep. In a way, what he's saying there to the media and to people who follow those networks is what a lot of us on the right were saying to the overreaction on the left to Trump in 2016, which is, guys, Trump's not the disease, he's just a symptom. It's so let's get canceled and try not to get off on a tangent. So I was watching an interesting documentary a couple weeks ago about this expedition into Guatemala to find this lost city. And it was one of the early uses of LiDAR in archaeology. And it's ubiquitous now. They use it a lot. If you've watched Ancient Apocalypse, Graham Norton's documentary on Netflix, they talk about it. They use it a lot, especially when that first place they go to in Southeast Asia. I can't remember what that place was called. They do a lot of LiDAR work, a lot of ground scanning. Well, this was one of the early uses of it. And it was this really difficult expedition back deep into the jungle in narco territory. So it was dangerous. And there was this epilogue to the finding of this lost city, which was that half of the expedition ended up with leishmaniasis. Is that how it's pronounced? It's essentially a parasitic fly that lays an egg in you, and then the larva starts to eat your flesh.
It's the bot fly.
Mm-hmm. There are a number of
go to YouTube and just search
that.
bot fly, and you'll see
horrific.
A lot of removals. Yeah,
right. So it's and the guys were talking about it. Some of the cameramen and some of the archaeologists and anthropologists who went, and even some of the security guys who got infected. And they say it took them weeks to realize it because it just looks like any other bug bite. And because of what's going on, it numbs the area around it. So you don't realize there's something wrong until after a month, the other bug bites have gone away and that one's still there, and you're scratching at it, and then it just kind of falls apart and there's this hole in your arm. It's like, oh my gosh, I scratched it and now there's a hole in my arm. That's not what caused it, man. That's just now you're just seeing it. The effect was already there. You've got to go find what actually caused that. You're just looking at the, I need to start scratching myself. No, you need to. And this is what made me laugh, is because this documentary was made in like 2016, 2015, something like that. And lo and behold, who should show up at the end of this documentary except the good Dr. Fauci himself, talking about these kinds of diseases. And I went and I looked it up. He didn't use the word, but there is a certain Nobel Prize winning drug that is sometimes used to treat these kinds of diseases because it's really good at killing parasites. And I laughed my butt off. But that is what Trump was. Is no, the botfly had already laid its egg. We were already corrupt. We were already being hollowed out. Our institutions were already weak. Our institutions were already.
You're going to segue me to the professor, aren't you?
Quite possibly, but I got some stuff to bring up here first.
Yeah.
And
Graham Hancock, by the way, is that what you said?
Yeah, I said Ancient Apocalypse. Graham Hancock. Did I say Herbie Hancock?
I thought you said a different name. That's why I was like,
okay,
yeah. I might be wrong. I was thinking of other things. So
RFK is shining a light on it, and that is why it pairs so wonderfully with that ad from Shanahan of, guys, wake up, stop obsessing over this one guy and look at what is going on. And to his point there, but in another part of the speech, he also talks about ballot access, about how he had to spend tens of millions of dollars because the party of his father and his uncle and of himself for his whole life until about 16 months ago was the Democrat Party. And it was ostensibly the party of the little guy, the party of the working man, the party of democracy.
Which is why my grandfather was a lifelong Democrat since 1920 something. Yeah.
And Trump isn't the only one that has had to deal with lawfare. In that speech, RFK Jr. talks about the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that has had to been spent on legal fees, on legal challenges, because every time they would get on a ballot in a state, the Democrats would go to court to try and get him off the ballot. And now, lo and behold, right after that speech, they start letting me share my screen. Dang it. Stop being undemocratic, Sam.
Oh, okay. Well, while I'm doing that, this is dissonance right here, by the way. In that same Breaking Points episode, they were talking about something that Ryan Grimm, who I actually like Ryan Grimm, he's a really, really reasonable lefty. But he did a documentary about, I think it's Ecuador, it might be El Salvador. It was an South American country, but I'm wanting to say Ecuador. And he did a whole thing on how they used to be a socialist Democrat company or country, and then it got taken over by the right, and now they're using lawfare to keep the other parties down, and it's the U.S. is backing it, and it's not about the old regime change through military like we used to have. It's about lawfare, and I'm like, how can this is where dissonance comes in, because you also say Trump deserves everything he gets with lawfare. And RFK gets everything he deserves, everything he gets with lawfare. You're doing a documentary on a country who is further along in the process of what we started in the last 4 years. You know, it's just like, open your mind, guys. Open your mind. Yeah. And this is why I can't call myself left or right, because I am what is.
Yeah.
You
know? And one of the reasons I thought that speech was one of his best is because it showed, you know, in our Wheel of Time episodes, I'm always ranting about, you know, show, don't tell. It showed I just completely lost my train. Oh, how you can maintain your intellectual integrity and still navigate this nuanced world we live in. Because he said, I still have some serious disagreements with Trump and the Trump campaign, but on these key issues, and he laid out what he thought were the key important issues to him and to his campaign. On these key issues, we are in agreement. And so he urged people, hey, if you live in a deep blue or deep red state, I would ask that you still vote for me, because that is how we make a movement going forward. But for right now, in order to stop the disaster that is the Biden-Harris administration, or whoever the hell is pulling the strings, I'm going to remove my name from the ballot in, I think he gave the number 10, but there are about 10 key battleground states that are ultimately going to decide this election. Is 10 purple states that could go either way. So he's going to remove his name from the ballot and urge his supporters to vote for Trump so that we can stop the insanity. Well, what do we have here is, of course, then immediately, and I was specifically looking for Michigan because to me it's one of the more egregious instances where you have just a blazingly partisan Secretary of State there and an awful governor. But I found this Forbes article that pointed out, and this is from the 29th, which is yesterday from when we're recording here, that there are a number of swing states where Kennedy is having trouble getting his name removed. Oh my gosh, what happened here? They make him spend tens of millions of dollars to try and get his name on the ballot. And now that he wants his name off the ballot and is endorsing Trump, now all of a sudden it's no. You got to stay on the ballot.
Yeah, and considering his announcement was a day apart from officially being able to put Kamala on the ballots and remove Joe Biden, are you going to say that day was the deadline?
Well, there are a lot now it probably won't matter because I doubt there are any swing states where this could happen, but
Wisconsin's a swing state, Michigan's a swing state.
Well, no, but there are a lot of Republicans and conservative pundits out there saying, okay, red states, don't put Kamala's name on the ballot, put Biden's name on the ballot. No. All right, if you're going to play this game, let's play this game. Mutually assured destruction. Fine. If you won't honor this request to take Kennedy's name off the ballot, then we're not putting Kamala's name on the ballot. It's going to be Joe Biden.
What I want to see is, did they drop the lawsuit to take his name off the ballot in New York? Probably not, because that's what made him make this decision, because they pulled him off the ballot in New York through lawfare. And, you obviously can't win without New York if you're an independent. So
New York is one of those states where it was feasible that Kennedy could make some inroads, could have a chance of serious success.
So basically what you need is a tracker map of every state he was going to threaten the ability of blue to win. Is he allowed to be pulled off versus the swing states where he actually mostly affected Trump, because again, as we talked about in the last one, the independent voters that wanted RFK actually more align with Trump than they do with Harris. So yeah, no, it's this kind of thing happens every elective, but I think election, excuse me. But this is the one where a third party candidate came out and basically drew it out with a thick Sharpie marker for everybody to see.
So according to this Forbes article from yesterday, it looks like he's staying on the ballot in Michigan and Wisconsin, which are very key swing states, and North Carolina. He's probably going to be able to get removed from Pennsylvania and Nevada, which are swing states. And he's successfully withdrawing from Arizona, which is another key swing state. And Ohio, which shouldn't be a swing state, it should be pretty solidly Trump, but it's
especially with Vance on the ticket.
Little, yeah. And it's unclear about what his status is going to be in Georgia, which shouldn't be a swing state, but it is now. But the added wrinkle of showing us what Kennedy just told us is that in these same states, especially Michigan, they're still blocking Cornel West. So they're refusing to take Kennedy's name off the ballot, but they're still actively blocking Cornel West. But now there is some recent news here because this is from the 26th. So this is still in, but this was after I saw this because I started looking at this after Kennedy's speech, is that a judge in Michigan has said, no, you can't do this, put his name back on the ballot. But here's what's funny about this, about what the judge said here in this Cornel West situation, is that, where is it? Here we go. All right. So this is from Lansing, Michigan. Independent presidential candidate Cornel West must appear on the ballot in the battleground state of Michigan. A judge ruled about a week after West was disqualified. Disqualified by whom, AP? Tell us. Well, that would be the very partisan Democrat Secretary of State. Court of Claims Judge James Robert Redford wrote in a decision released Saturday that West's campaign submitted the proper number of signatures to qualify for the ballot and that presidential candidates are not required to file affidavits of identity. So the Democrats are challenging the validity of the signatures, the identities of those on the signatures to get them on the ballot. But if you challenge the validity of the identity of mail-in voters, you're an undemocratic insurrectionist, and we're going to prosecute you in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I mean by we've look, you know, don't compromise your principles, but you also have to figure out how you maintain your principles and navigate a very messy world. Because as hardcore pro-life as I am, do I want that? No, I don't. Now, do I still think I might or could vote for RFK if he's on the ballot in Texas, which he may or may not be, I'm not sure. Well, according to the Forbes article, he did remove his name in Texas, but Texas is actually got me concerned because the four major metro areas have exploded so much in the past 5 years that I actually worry Texas might be turning purple.
Okay, so you brought up Cornel West, but this is just this is the first one that comes up with a quick search of Jill Stein.
Yes, yeah.
On presidential ballots. Yeah. So she's the Green Party candidate. Cornel West, RFK Jr., Jill Stein. Green Party's typically on every ballot all the time. You know what I haven't looked up, and now I'm curious, is the Libertarian Party, how they're being treated. Because Chase Oliver is kind of a trash candidate, but I still want the Libertarian Party on the ballot, right? Because it has earned it. I mean, what did not Jorgensen, she was the last one, but the one before that, Gary Johnson?
Yeah, the idiot New Mexico governor that was.
I liked Gary Johnson. I voted for Gary Johnson, actually.
I didn't vote for him. I voted for the party in the hopes that it would get them over that threshold that they needed.
And they did, 4.7%. They should have been at the next presidential debate. Now, Joe Jorgensen couldn't debate with a cardboard box, but yeah, other than that, I mean, but Chase Oliver's like the worst. Yeah, we bring back Jorgensen. Geez, really? But even libertarians are like, I'm just going to sit this one out. Yeah, but at the same time, I wonder where they're at on ballot access, because typically they're always there. Green Party is always there. And they're trying to keep Jill Stein off the ballot. Why are they trying to keep Jill Stein off the ballot? Oh, because the Green Party cost Hillary in 2016. Realistically.
They also still blame Nader for Gore losing to W.
Oh, I mean, as close as that one was, it might be true. But I mean, what was the vote? What was the vote split in Florida? Because Florida was the one in question. I mean,
it turned out to be bigger than what was initially reported. There were,
but still bigger as in hanging chads, or bigger as in
no, a couple thousand.
Yeah, well, Nader could have taken a couple thousand easy.
Even left leaning. I mean, it was years later, but even left leaning news organizations like Time and USA Today, and I don't remember who else, but there were about 4 or 5 of them that did this deep investigative reporting starting out trying to prove that W stole the election and then said, oh, well, actually, no, this was all a bunch of nonsense. And yeah, it was really, really close, but W won.
Well, basically, realistically, I should say that the 2020 legal challenges are probably the result of what happened in 2000 because the courts entertained it in 2000, and that's why it kept going and going and going and going. And we had pictures of hanging chads and all of that. And this time around, they're just like, look, let's just take the result, man, because we don't want to go through that again. I have a feeling that there was a lot of that.
Well, according to anonymous sources, it was actually the summer of love that made the courts not want to weigh in. Because supposedly
the threat of riots, which is why I should have put up madness of crowds.
According to anonymous clerks in the Supreme Court, there was either an exchange between, I think it was between Roberts and Soule, that making the point that, hey, we, the court, took up Bush versus Gore in 2000. We need to take this up as well. And supposedly Roberts was yelling so loud he could be heard outside of this closed door meeting that only the justices were in. And he could be heard screaming, in 2000, there weren't effing riots in the street, except he didn't say effing. But my wife's right there and she'll throw something at me if I drop an F-bomb. So
you mean Clarence Thomas, not Soule.
My brain.
By the way,
thank you.
I was waiting for a pause there to jump in there.
Yeah, sorry. Clarence Thomas, not Thomas Soule. That's my brain was braining.
Yeah, that could be a Wheel of Fortune before and after. Clarence Thomas Soule.
That'd be awesome.
Prominent Black Americans before and after Clarence Thomas Soule.
Yep. But gutless weasel Chief Justice Roberts wouldn't take up the case because they were literally afraid of sparking more riots and up for their own personal safety, which, considering some nut job drove across the country to try and murder Brett Kavanaugh because of the Roe v. Wade decision. There wasn't the Roe v. Wade decision, but you know what I mean, the Mississippi abortion case decision. Yeah, it's not necessarily a invalid concern.
You mean Amy Schumer having to pay $35 for trespassing wasn't enough for stopping a Supreme Court nomination process? She's on the list of people that say they're going to move if Trump wins.
Anyway, speaking of undemocratic,
when can I bitch and moan about my teachers? Give me the green light, because I'm ready.
Well, let me this article, because I pulled this one up because it's not related to anything specifically. Most people, I hadn't heard about this. I vaguely remember hearing about this a while ago, but I really didn't know anything about it until I saw this come across my feed and started reading on it. Reason Magazine, which is a very libertarian, they're uber libertarian, and they have been following this case. That, do you remember hearing about a website called Backpage a while back? It was started as a competition to Craigslist, essentially, is what it was. It was just it was another Craigslist. Well, because of that meant you could buy, sell, advertise just about anything.
What would be the difference between the word prosecuted and persecuted?
Well, here's where the persecution comes in.
Okay.
Is that
demonization.
The sitting vice president, now presidential candidate, shortly before moving to Washington, D.C., successfully scapegoated through heavily publicized, if legally unsuccessful, pimping prosecutions, a career newspaperman who last week shot himself to death at age 74 rather than sit through yet another prostitution facilitation trial that he insisted to his dying days was an attack on free speech. If the chances of Kamala Harris being asked this week or any week about the late James Larkin or her starring role in the demonization of his and Michael Lacey's online classified advertising company Backpage as, quote, the world's top online brothel are vanishingly small. That's because people have a natural revulsion toward anything associated, however falsely, with child prostitution or sex trafficking. True. But it also stems from something far less excusable. When it comes to conflicts between the feds and those from the professionally unpopular corners of the free speech industry, journalists have been increasingly taking the side of the man. And it goes on
in caps. Yeah.
Yep.
He emphasized it in his voice if you're just listening, but in caps on the article as well.
This is reason.com, Matt Welch from August 9th.
And Reason is typically a libertarian publication, by the way, so it's not Republican or Democrat.
The reason this came back up is because this trial or trials have been ongoing, and apparently there is another trial for the guy who didn't commit suicide. They're getting into the sentencing phase, and there are all sorts of shenanigans going on with the judge in the sentencing phase here, and that's why Reason and Matt Welch have been talking about this again now here in 2024, a year after this article, and pointing out that Harris was part of this because she, as an AG in California, was part of this, repeatedly going after, even though there were a number of courts saying, hey, you can't do this. You know, Section 230, First Amendment, these people are not a publisher, they are a provider. And that if there are specific instances of legal violations, then you go after that. And if they won't cooperate with legal warrants, specific warrants, then you have a case against them. No matter how many times they were told that by judges, they kept going back after these guys. And the subheadline for this article is, when it comes to conflicts with people engaged in unpopular or disfavored speech, too many journalists side with the feds. And the reason I bring this up is because this is another bit of that nuance of, yeah, it's really driving me crazy how Trump is dealing with the abortion issue, but that's not the only life issue here. That's not the only liberty issue here. And who Kamala Harris is, what she has demonstrated, you know, the one that is most well known is her laughing about smoking weed and then locking up thousands of people on marijuana possession charges. And this leads into the Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg sending this letter to who was it?
Roberts, the speaker, right?
It was either him or Judiciary Committee. I can't remember. Let's see, where is it here? So this is from Hot Air, which is a right-leaning site, Ned Morrissey, who's a conservative pundit, from August 28th. And I really like his take on this, because I was seeing a lot of people going, ooh, you know, a lot of the pro TDS people are, Zuckerberg knows, because he's got all this metadata for Meta, that he knows which way people are trending, and he knows that Trump's going to win. So he's trying to get in Trump. Guys, calm down, and let's have a little, you know, intellectual honesty here. And I like the way Ed Morrissey phrases this. Should we, the title is, where are the Facebook files on censorship? Should we hail Mark Zuckerberg as a truth teller this late in the game? Facebook founder and Meta CEO got a lot of attention this week for finally fessing up to colluding with the government to censor the speech of his customers. Zuckerberg's letter offers his regrets, as Jazz notes skeptically, for Facebook's rush to bend the knee to Big Brother and ludicrous fact-checking schemes by the mainstream media. That's true of both COVID-19 discussion, Zuckerberg admits, and the McCarthy-esque effort to paint exposure of Biden family corruption as, quote, Russian disinformation. Please note, however, that it took Zuckerberg at least 3 years to see the light on both tracks, as John McCain might say, and then he has the awesome clip from Die Hard of Welcome to the Party, Pal. And that's true. When, you know, when was it? Was it 2 years ago that he was on Rogan and face planted himself? Where Rogan,
that's only been about a year.
It was about a year ago.
Yeah, that's about a year ago. Yeah.
Where Rogan just walked him right into admitting that. Matt Taibbi sees this, back to the article. Matt Taibbi sees this letter as a bombshell against government overreach, however. In an essay titled Zuckerberg Defies the Borg, Taibbi sees this letter as more than just a belated CYA. He reminds readers that Zuckerberg has potential liabilities that are not just domestic political concerns, but actual criminal prosecution threats in Europe as Liberty's sun sets on the continent. Pavel Durov just found out the hard way that EU censors and their member states are deadly serious about squashing free speech and political dissent. For anyone who doesn't know, I assume our Russian friend does. Pavel Durov is a Russian citizen and the founder of Telegram.
Technically, he's an Arab Emirate citizen. But
okay. That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the UAE sent a letter saying, "What the F?" to France. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Russia went after him for Telegram, and so he.
That's right. So yes, now he has UAE citizenship because he had to leave Russia because he wouldn't play ball with them either. So he's very Musketeer in that sense. That sounds stinky. Maybe that's not such a good phrase. As Taibbi also points out, American political figures are pushing in the same direction. That battalion of the Borg have already targeted bigger figures than Zuckerberg. Taibbi reminds us, and this is from a Taibbi article, there are potent warnings in the letter, the most obvious being the, quote, reporting was not Russian disinformation portion. On August 6, 2020, the FBI briefed Senators Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley, warning both that by investigating the Hunter Biden Burisma story, they were advancing a, quote, Russian disinformation campaign. Worse, government sources subsequently leaked news of that briefing to the Washington Post, which then reported that the Republican senators had been given a defense briefing by the FBI, in part to see how they respond to being informed their investigation was seen as advancing Russian interests. They're now on notice, is how former FBI official turned media sleazeball Frank Figliuzzelli put it. Zuckerberg's letter touches on this larger story. The FBI involved itself in electoral politics by lying to business leaders and Congress about the origin of the Burisma tale. Senators Johnson and Grassley were bluntly threatened, informed that the FBI considered the investigation to be service of a Russian plot, and put, quote, on notice that their behavior going forward would be monitored. Was Facebook similarly warned? What would that record look like? What would Zuckerberg say about it if he could give a frank and extended interview? This edges up to my back to Morrissey. This is edges up to my more skeptical point, but Taibbi's penultimate paragraph gets even closer. Zuckerberg putting censor in writing forces the Dana Bashes of the world to start adding the Meta CEO to their already bloated list of Putin-loving far right-wing fabulists. This technique is already stretched beyond the limits of plausibility, and a full defection from the bullshit cartel of Zuckerberg, whose internal analysts surely have a more accurate read on the population's leanings than any poll agency, would make continued dismissals of censorship claims all but impossible. Were he to give full evidence to someone like Jordan, it would make the Twitter files look like a mild appetizer. And that is the crux of Morrissey's point here, is that if Zuckerberg is serious, if this isn't just a cynical CYA, then where are the Facebook files? Because when Musk took over, he dropped the Twitter files. He started going through the internal company documents and giving access to reporters he trusted, that he trusted with their integrity, but also had reach, so that people would see, here's what's actually going on behind the scenes with this collusion between government and private companies to circumvent the First Amendment. All right, well, if you're serious, Zuckerberg, where are the Facebook files? And
I think they're coming because I think what happened in the UK is a catalyst for this, because I think he's getting afraid now of, I mean, what happened in the UK with, we're going to try to get you to extradite Americans for their Twitter posts. And then you've got the Telegram guy, Duval, right? Getting arrested in France.
Durov.
Durov.
Yeah.
And it's just I think Zuck is not as tough as he thinks.
Yeah.
And
I'm
he's throwing it out there, where with Durov getting arrested, and they're your next Musk. Musk has
well,
been like, come at me, bro.
but also don't forget what's going on in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
With this judge going after Twitter hard, going after X, and threatening Musk and threatening those. So what did Musk do? Well, he closed down X's offices in Brazil. He said, I'm not going to risk my people. They're being threatened. They're being threatened with arrest. They're even threatening my lawyers. They were threatening the council. The cornerstone, one might argue, of the rule of law is the right to counsel, in much the same way that the cornerstone to international relations is that embassies and diplomats are sacrosanct. That no matter how tense things get between countries, you don't go after the diplomats and you don't go after their embassies, or else the whole structure falls apart. And this judge in Brazil is threatening his counsel. And so Musk said, fine, shut it down. Well, except now that judge is going after other businesses. I think what's his satellite internet? Starlink.
Starlink, yeah.
So now I don't know the details because I haven't gone down this rabbit hole, but now that judge is going after Starlink. It almost makes you think what you said it was about isn't what it's about. It almost makes it seem like you're out to get this one guy. And this one company, and it's not actually about the misinformation, disinformation that you say it is.
And everybody tries to paint Musk as an evil supervillain, like a Dr. Evil kind of character. You do realize how much technology and how smart this guy is. If he wanted to EMP you, he would. He made Starlink. You know how easy it would be to just flip a switch and Starlink cut everything off?
He has his own rockets. Dr.
Dr.
Evil only had one.
He has thousands of satellites.
Yeah.
If you sit outside on a good night where there's not too much light pollution and you can watch the sky, you will see things go like this, and then kind of like in a grid. And then sometimes like that. That's Musk's. That's SpaceX. Those are his satellites gridding the entire world. If he wanted to say, you know what? Cut off all signals. He could do it.
Well, he did the inverse with Ukraine.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. All you have to do is switch it to you just take it from 11 to 0. That's all you have to do. And yeah, if he was this truly evil guy, Brazil would be without anything right now.
And it's a big deal to a place like Brazil because it is such a huge country and it is difficult.
I heard flying over that
infrastructure.
I heard flying over Brazil is intensely annoying.
And because of the Amazon basin, it is very difficult to link the country with infrastructure because you're having to go through rainforests and you're having to deal with, a seasonal weather pattern where the rivers routinely go from just a normal slow flowing river to now it's a swamp, 50 feet up. So that satellite internet's a big deal. And he could switch it off if he wanted to. And these people don't care because what matters is their power to enforce their ideology. This is where I'm sucking back to your professors because this is why it matters.
You are putting me right in the pocket right now.
So. This is why it matters that the BLM Inc. founders bragged that they were trained Marxists. Because Marxism isn't just an ideology, it is a political tactic. And it
Hold on. All right. Well, that very depressingly brings us to the last segment of professors. This is is it third semester now? Yeah, third semester now. So my sixth class. So I'm in my fifth and sixth class. I'm only doing them 2 at a time because of, I work for a living, unlike most students, and school is expensive. So it's two things that are making me take this slow, but it took 6 classes in to get in my morning class on Tuesday, my first they them professor, and let me elaborate for a second. My first they them professor, but he she they is actually kind of cool. So this class is actually probably going to work out. The evening class is my first awful. My first overtly awful. I think my stats professor might have been, but it doesn't really play into
you're going to
stats
have
classes.
to define that for anyone who doesn't know.
Okay, awful is AWFL. And I'm going to change one word from the standard definition, but I'll tell you what the original word was. But it's affluent, white, female, lefty. That's mine. Lefty is liberal in other, but I'm a liberal. She's not liberal. No, this is lefty. This is off the pale, religious left.
Again, this is why I prefaced this, why I teed this up by pointing out BLM Inc. was founded by 2 angry black lesbians who bragged that they were trained Marxists.
Yeah,
it's not liberal.
Yeah, it's not liberal. If anything authoritarian enters the picture, that automatically eliminates liberal, because the root word of liberal is liberty. Liberty is the opposite of authoritarianism. So if you're a Nazi or you're a communist, you are not liberal. We might be able to find something in the middle that is liberal, but it is not either of those. So sorry, conservatives, quit calling all the communists liberals, because you're missing the root word. Learn English, okay?
Well, it worked and it meant something in the 80s and 90s. It is becoming less and less useful as a term, especially as a term of attack.
Yeah, and I've heard so many things for, like, Dave Rubin always says classic liberal, or now Tim Pool's saying post-liberal. Post-liberal might be kind of okay, but it's like, no, I'm just me now. I can't identify with anything. I'm a free thinker. I am very anti-authoritarian in almost every way. And wherever you're gonna put me, call me whatever you want. I'll just tell you what I am. Okay.
I'm leaning towards, if anyone asks, I'm leaning towards I'm gonna start calling myself a constitutionalist. That's what I am.
Yeah, I've liked that as well, especially if you really read the Constitution. But
can we actually get back to following that as our rule of law?
I'm gonna call myself a miller. We used to have like bakers and blacksmiths and stuff. I want to be a miller, John Stuart Mill on Liberty. That's the kind of liberal I am, is on Liberty. Read that.
Lucky.
And you'll know.
Well, then then maybe I should call myself a Luckian.
Yeah.
John Locke is my favorite of the Enlightenment philosophers.
Yeah. Maybe I'm gonna piss you off and just call myself a Dockian.
I still haven't watched him on trigonometry, but I intend to, because he is a smart guy. It's just the way he frames some of his arguments. I'm like, God, dude, come on.
I still say watch him with Robert Greene, because they play devil's advocate with each other a lot, and it's a really good discussion. Robert Greene being the physicist, so that, like, Greene would be talking about physics, and Dawkins would play devil's advocate against what he's talking about, and then Dawkins would talk about evolutionary biology, and Green would play devil's advocate in that sense, like, oh, well, what do you think of this? And if I was to say this, da 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 da, and it's a really good conversation, and they're both really funny at times. So it's a good conversation. But back to teachers. So my they them professor actually, when she elaborated on it, when I finally had her in person, her, him, it, whatever, I think she would qualify herself as non-binary. She's like, you can call me this, da, 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 doctor this, da, 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 and I'm not going to say the actual name. And she said, even my first name is okay, depending on the situation. Just don't call me ma'am. And I was like, okay. But then she elaborated, and I respect it. She said, I'm from this particular part of California where ma'am is actually a derogatory word for old crone women. And I can't get over that. And when I moved to Texas, everybody calls me ma'am, and it's like, oh, I'm not an old crone. And I'm like,
that's where we are. That is,
it's just standard talk. I call my 11-year-old niece ma'am.
A gentleman will call a younger woman or even a girl ma'am.
Yeah.
As a show of respect. Yeah.
But where she's from, it's derogatory. Like, you're the old lady. You're out to pasture. You do your grandma things and get over with.
I understand it, and I can respect it so long as you can respect it. Yeah. Well, you live in Texas now, and it's going to happen. So at least if you know where it's coming from.
Explain it like that, I respect it.
And I'll try my best.
I will do my best. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I always have my thing when things are ambiguous. I thank you, sir, when it's good, when it's masculine. Thank you, ma'am, when I know they're female. But if it's ambiguous, I said, thank you very much. I don't even go there. You don't even need to. You don't have to be, you can still be polite without doing that. And I was like, you know what? I respect that. And the fact that she took the time to make that, instead of just saying my pronouns are and you better respect it. Yeah. Now she says too much, so it's hard to listen to her, but
so not necessarily a lost cause, but
okay, so let's start with her class, because it's cognitive and affective psychology, which is very rooted in neuroscience. So it's more biologically based. It's really abstract because cognition is one of the hardest things to actually describe, and it's one of the things we're really trying to figure out. What is consciousness? Now, I hate the statement of, well, we don't know what consciousness is, because we actually have a good idea of a lot of things of consciousness. We just don't know the final answer. And you can say that about any science. Okay, you can say that about electricity, but we do a pretty good job of navigating it, right? So we actually have gotten to a pretty good place of navigating consciousness and cognition. So it's really, it is the most, I'm going to use this word because it's important, most replicable areas of psychological science, because it's really based in biology. So the first class that we met in person, we went over the replication crisis. So I'm going to bring up a slide from that class here. And I don't know where to give the credit from what textbook, but here's the slide. Okay, so we have in psychology and in social sciences what's called the replication crisis, which means overall, you see that red number in the bottom. And if you're not watching, you're just listening, that's a 36. 36% of findings from the literature are replicable. That's not good. That's no bueno. Okay. So what replicable means is if someone takes my study and does it again, they would get the same result. Okay. 36% is not good. That's really bad. So we look at the really good ones. Cognitive articles are about 53. That's better. It's still not great, but it's better. Which is what I say about physiology and exercise science, is it's hard to do studies. So 53% is a lot better. I can respect that. I would love it to be higher, but it's a really hard thing to study. Memory, learning, and cognition, 48%. Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, 23%.
Oof.
So basically, if you took 4 papers from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, you could randomly throw out 3 of them and probably still get a good result. Right? So this is what we call the replication crisis. And there's so many things behind it. P-hacking and basically fabricating data, all of those things go into it. But part of it is just stupid ideologies. But again, it's important that I'm pointing out that the worst culprit is Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. Then we're going to go to the next slide. Did it come up?
Mm-hmm.
Great example of this is metaphorical and social priming. Priming, an often subtle reference that leads to change in behavior. So an example of that that she has on there here is elderly priming studies. Elderly priming studies where when they just put pictures of old people up in a hall and all of a sudden people walk slower. Or you put a picture of people eating up, people ate more at a diner or something like that, which sounds like great science. Oh, we did it, but it doesn't replicate. And the priming studies are the worst of the worst. So let's go to social psychology, which is my second class, which, if you didn't notice, was the 23%. Paper, Journal of Social Psychology and Personality. Paper, Journal of Social Psychology and Paper. Oh, here's the one I have. Social Psychology and Personality. And, oh my gosh, the power of priming. You know, the priming that was the worst of the worst in culprits of things. So not only do I have a class that completely contradicts another class, which is okay. That's okay, because then you can like get both. It's like listening to 2 political arguments, right? You can take both sides and then you can figure out which one makes the most sense. But one of them in the literature is completely not replicable. I can take all those papers I just threw up and throw out 3/4 of them randomly and probably get the right answer. So this is going to be a long semester. And we haven't even got to the worst part because we haven't even got to the teacher. So they, them, doesn't like to be called ma'am. She's kind of cool. She says too much, hard to listen to her. But other than that, she's okay. Other teacher actually speaks well, except she randomly hums every time she's doing something weird songs. But other than that, she's okay as far as presentation and how she speaks and everything. First class is, oh, I want your input on how we run our group discussions and everything, because I want y'all to have as much freedom and control as possible. So we go through that. Second class, first class discussion. There was no freedom. There was no...
This is my shocked face.
Yeah, there was no, how we want to run things. It was my way. In fact, there was a point in the conversation, which is me. Someone said something to answer one of her questions and was kind of like really having trouble getting her point out. And the professor was trying to help her, but it wasn't in a very good, productive way. And then there was silence, pure silence, because they weren't on the same wavelength. And this girl, she's probably like 22, 23. She couldn't get her point across, and the teacher couldn't make her see the thing the right way that she wanted to see her, which I don't think even was the right way. But I had a thought that I was like, oh, well, what she was saying plus this might make more sense. It was improv. Yes, and okay, I see what she was getting at. I don't think you saw it, teacher. Let me add this thing to see if it can put it all together. So I kind of blurted it out. Pure silence for like 30 seconds before I said anything. So I wasn't talking over anybody. in a group discussion, wouldn't think that was rude at all. She was like, let her get the teachers. This is the teacher. I'm doing the impression with a man voice. Let her talk about it and we'll come to you later. I didn't call on you. That was her
There you
answer.
mansplain.
Yeah, exactly. And then the girl like took that as, oh, I need to talk more. And she just started trying to say same thing she was saying. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, this would have been a good thing. Okay, so finally that moment passed. Going around. This is a 3-hour conversation, by the way. So this goes on a while.
Ugh.
There are 3 guys in the class. 2 of us are white, and one of us is like maybe Filipino, Hispanic, white kind of mixture, maybe a military baby of some kind. And the other white guy, in a moment of silence, when nobody was talking, says something. She came down on him even harder. She was like, I didn't call on you. Raise your hand next time. My first thought is, are we in kindergarten? I thought this was grad school. Second thought is, nobody's talking over anybody. It wasn't rude. You weren't talking. Nobody was talking. Someone just said something to ask a question, So those 2 things happened. And then later we're going through the class. The Filipino Latin maybe-ish guy was making a point. He was talking about something. This is about 30 minutes later. And one of the black girls in the class talked over him, chimed in, and made a point on top of him. And she turned to her and goes, oh, that was such a great contribution to the conversation.
Oh, this is going to be a fun class.
And I'm like, yeah. So first of all, you get a little bit of power. You're extreme authoritarian. Kamala Harris. And second, you have an extreme bias that is probably based on reading Robin DiAngelo, because you're an awful.
Well, reading the people Robin DiAngelo plagiarized.
Yeah. And I now, for the rest of the semester, every time we have to read these stupid articles that I just brought forward, I have to hold my tongue and say, you do realize you're the worst for replication in the entire field of psychology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's
bring a D4 to class next time. Help me make your point. Here, I'm going to roll this die. So I've got 4 papers here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. 3. Okay. That's the real one.
No, because she does ask questions in her little thing for the discussion is, what are the limitations of this study? But she doesn't want to hear it. One of the things in one of the studies we were talking about was they did 2 studies within one study, and it was about enhancing experience with group exposure. So basically, people tasted chocolate and then rated it, and people tasted chocolate with another person and rated it, but it was the exact same chocolate. And then it was if the chocolate was bad and all this stuff, and it was decently designed, and it did show a statistically significant increase in experience if you were with somebody else, which we all know if you've ever gone to a college football game, right, is a phenomenon. But one of the things they said in it was they only included females in it because the first sample had mostly females, and so they didn't think it would be different with males and females. So it just makes sense. And I was like, no, that actually doesn't, because we know females are more collective. So if you're more collectivist, you're probably going to rate things higher in a group than if you were alone, versus if you're more individualistic, it wouldn't matter as much. So I'm glad that you made it more uniform by only having females in these 2 studies, but now we need to compare females and males to see if there was a difference. Your statement is wrong. What you did was okay. And she didn't want to hear that. Oh my gosh, that was not the right thing to say, even though she called on me with my hand up.
You're definitely going to have to use one of those fake studies in this.
No, because that gets me to my second point, because there is a greater issue here, and that's does my being a white male affect my grade, right? And if I do something like that, that could be the catalyst that affects my grade. Whereas if I do my best like I have in every class and my grade is horrible, well, I've got already a body of work that basically for the last, let's see, 2007, 8, 9, 11, 12, 14, and then 2023, I basically made an A- in that whole time. And if I get a below passing grade in this, even though I tried my hardest, I've got a body of work that says, you know what? Actually, I'm a really damn good student. Maybe this was the teacher. You know, I hate when people complain, oh, my coach just didn't like me, or da 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 da. Well, if you succeeded everywhere but that spot, I will listen to that argument.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were a problem everywhere you went, I won't. And so I've got to not be a problem and just do my best. And if I still do poorly, then it's actually probably her. And realistically, in the state of Texas, that's illegal and she could lose her job. So I have that in my hip pocket because I have a track record of success. And all of a sudden, there's something that came up. And yeah.
It's interesting that you brought up that you wanted to talk about this because just a couple of days ago, my son texted me of how do I explain this to someone? And this is someone with pronoun. This is a they them friend of theirs. And even the they them recognized and wanted to know, hey, how come colleges and universities are so leftist now? Okay, if the they them is noticing that. And my son's question was, how do I explain this? And I'm like, well, I don't know how you explain it succinctly, but it goes something like this. The Frankfurt School, Gramercy and the Long March Through the Institutions, the closing of the American mind, and then the coddling of the American mind. And if you want to throw in a little extra spice, you can mix in Steele's white guilt somewhere in there.
No, have them actually read the source material like I did. Are We Even Equal by Sensoy and D'Angelo. But in reading it, look at the most outrageous claims and then look up the source, which is what I did. And actually, I did it randomly. I didn't just even say it was outrageous. I just rolled dice. I was like, okay, she sourced 5 things here. And I rolled a dice, a 6-sided die, and picked the number, you know, and then looked up the source and, oh my gosh, she misrepresented that source. And that happened almost every time.
Well, the problem is there aren't a lot of people like Thomas Sowell. Because what you did is if Thomas Sowell has been asked before, how did you go from a Marxist, which he was in his youth, to who you are now? I looked at the data. As he actually started, shock, wonder of wonders, putting the Marxist ideology to the practical test and saying, do the results bear out from what they're saying? Oh my gosh. Not only do they not bear out, but everything is 180 degrees out of whack.
Yeah, well, that's one of the problems with the navigation right now is because one of the things I have to figure out is she actively doing this, or is she so indoctrinated that it is a part of her? And it was so seamless the way she reacted to white male versus the women of color. There's only 3 guys in the class. I mean, it's like 3 to 21 in the class. So the already male to female ratio is already skewed. And I guess the color distribution is probably representative of my area, which is a minority majority area. So it's not like overly skewed in the ethnic distribution, but it is skewed in the male female. And there was obviously a difference between how she treated the males and the females, and there was a difference between how she treated white male versus everybody else. I mean, she came down hard on the 2 times she was thought there was a you didn't follow the class rules, which we had us put together by her own process the week before to not be you call on me when my hand is raised. But, in fact, my answer was you do as little as possible and let us talk about it. That was what I said the week before. And she wrote that on the board, just like everything else. And then when it came down time, no, I have the power. You are my subordinates. And this is the she doesn't have any kids, but she is the overbearing mother.
Go full Freud on her. Do it.
Yeah, I might do that. I can stay within my integrity and do. I think I might. Yeah, I can be subtle. You know me. My strength in this whole process is I feel emotions, but I'm not easily triggered. I can feel anger all day and still not say anything, and or say the wrong thing. And I was trained from this at a young age because that was dealing with an oppressive stepfather. He would try to trigger you because if you did obnoxious, childish, teenage boy stuff and he beat you for it, he could get away with that in the 80s. But if you did nothing and he still beat you for it, that was a little harder to get away with. And I would always just stand up and not back down without doing something stupid. And I was trained for that, I guess. And so nature or nurture, I don't know. Maybe I was born that way. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know. That's the answer we can never, that's the answer we can never come up with. But now that I'm in this situation where someone is probably actively trying to trigger the guys in the class, realistically, because again, not purposefully, because she's indoctrinated. She's trained to do that. As D'Angelo says, one of the 4 pillars of activism is you are always an activist, no matter what the situation. And if she can get the white guy to be riled up in class, that's a win. And
well, it's interesting that you bring up that component of this movement, if you will, because I recently discovered an interesting guy
religion,
named
not movement, religion.
Yeah, true.
That's why I said, is it ingrained or is she purposefully doing it? Yeah.
Here's the problem with that idea is, so in some ways that could be beneficial. So there's this story about a young man coming to Frederick Douglass late in Douglass's life, and asking, what should I do? What is your advice to me, a young man who wants to affect change? And Douglass's response was agitate, agitate, agitate. And in the 1870s, 1880s, yeah, when
there was actually a right to be wronged, right?
Right. And when the system was truly oppressive and truly against you and had to be fought against, because there was so much going on as Reconstruction was just abandoned, and then there was so much move to push back and get things back to the way they were, the way they should be, as much as possible without actually reintroducing slavery. And Douglass had a point. Where people like D'Angelo are so insidious, and people like Kendi are so insidious, is that first slide you brought up, which is ostensibly what you people are doing is a scientific, in scare quotes. This is academia. You're supposed to be doing things that, if they are to stand up to scrutiny and rigor, should be replicable. Right? So if you are going to make a claim, if you are going to be an activist, but within the context of academia, intellectualism, science, then what you are being an activist for should be able to stand up to scrutiny. And so I recently found this interesting guy named Ryan Macbeth from the latest episode of the Unsubscribed podcast. And he's got a funny background, because he was 20 years an infantryman, And yet you wouldn't know it by looking at him because he looks like your stereotypical computer nerd. He's kind of this, short little chubby Irish guy, like someone we went to school with. And so 20 years, long time, and got out as a sergeant first class, so a senior NCO. But while he was in, he got a degree in computer science, and he also got a master's in some kind of engineering, and then he got another master's because some securities guy told him he was wrong, and he was like, but I literally do this thing that you said was okay, fine, I'm going to go get the certification that you have so I can just wave it in your face and say you're a dumbass. But one of the things he
Hence the whole
does,
reason I'm in school
yeah.
again.
So
Yeah.
one of the things this guy does is he uses metadata to find patterns and often to find specific people. So if, for instance, you need to find a bad guy and he's in this area somewhere, then you go to data guys like this, and he will buy all of this metadata that data brokers are collecting, and then he will start sifting through it. And one of the things he said, I don't even remember what the topic was, but this really jumped out at me, is now you have to be careful because I was assuming, but you can't go looking for a pattern. You just have to look at the data and let the pattern come to you. Otherwise, you're going to make it fit. And that's not necessarily going to be true. And for what this guy sometimes does in one of his day jobs, when he's not being a YouTuber, that's literally life or death. Because so that's a big effing deal that, oh yeah, it's that's the guy you're looking for over there. And so you just launched a Hellfire Ninja missile at some poor schmuck who's just trying to drive a cab because your data guy was trying to make the pattern fit that he wanted. And that's what professors like this are doing. They're trying to squeeze the world into their preconceived notion. They've already got it. Okay, well then all of your data, all of your analysis is all suspect.
Yeah. Which leads to bad results, which is why the mental health care industry is so bad. As I observe in class, not making my own pattern, but observing people who I know are already in the PhD program are in this class because it is a required class for either master's or PhD. And some of the thoughts that come out of their mouth when they raise their hand are, okay, so something as simple as this. Okay, so one of the things about social psychology is it's the study of real, imagined, or implied social pressure. That makes sense, right? We all know that exists. That's just common sense. People around you affect the way you behave, right? So you're with your mother, you probably throw the F-bomb a lot less than when you're at the bar drinking with friends, right? So that kind of thing, that's a real, that would be what we call the real effect of social psychology. So your perception of where I'm at in the moment, in the situation, affects the way I behave. So your mom is there, you behave different than if you're at the bar with friends. That's real. If you are in a group of unknown people and you're imagining what they're going to think of you if you do a certain thing, that would be the imagined. But the implied would be something like there's a stop sign and you stop even though you don't see anything around you, but you still stop because it's implied that you would be reprimanded for running that stop sign. There could be a cop there, there might not be, but it's just something that we take as a social construct that makes us behave differently. If you did run it and a cop catches you, you get a ticket, but that's not real because you don't know the cop's there or not. It's just implied. So there's a very large percentage of the class that didn't get that concept, the difference between those three. Now, I will admit, my struggle is A lot of times it's all three, because you're still imagining what your mother's reaction is going to be versus what it really is if you were to like throw out an F-bomb at some point. But you probably have a lot of data to say that's a real concern. So, you know, a lot of those things are all three, but at the same time, just separating those as concepts, there was a very large percentage of the class that didn't understand that. And I'm like, y'all are graduate students. This is why I wanted to be the whole class like this, because I could answer everything she says. But at the same time, then you're considered, oh, that's your white privilege or whatever, you know?
I was told there would be privilege.
Yeah, I'm just like, no, this is actually simple stuff would be my answer to it. It's like,
this is common sense navigating life.
yeah, this is not a 6,000 level course. I'm sorry. You know, come on. You can the girl I wanted to help, I was just like, oh, I see where you're going, but you don't get it. Let me throw this other thing in there. Let me throw this thing in there to help you out. But then you're called the white knight. You're the white male savior, right?
Yeah, I think what you're probably gonna have to do in situations like that is jeopardy it and frame it in a question, in the form of a question of, excuse me, can I ask a clarifying question? Do you mean this?
That is how I framed when I spoke up.
Okay. And even then you got slapped down.
Even then I got slapped down. Yes. So I did try that.
That's even more egregious.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't include that part.
If you're trying to just ask hey, I'm just to clarify, can you answer this question here? And then you still get slapped down. You're not saying, well, this is this. Oy vey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that seriously leans towards the, oh, she's definitely biased against you, cracker.
Yeah, no, this is not me making an observation where I'm splitting hairs or like jumping at shadows. This was so overt. I was just like, wow.
Did anyone else see that?
Yeah, now the other white guy, I'm gonna have to have a talk with outside of class because I don't know if he should be in this class. I'm not sure if he should be in a discussion format class period, because he's extremely neurodivergent. Like people throw that phrase around, but no, he is, if you have a spectrum of autism, he's right in the middle, you know, and I don't think he's picking up on the social cues. I think he's going to keep doing this thing. And I just have a half a mind to scream at the teacher every time she reprimands him, to be like, that's your ableism talking. I mean, really, right? Because I mean, he is so off that on social cues that I don't think he's getting it. We had a little conversation because we like broke up into small groups for a second, and he was in my small group, and the way he talked, I was just like, what you said was intelligent, but it was so off base. I'm just like, okay, let me reword that for you. And he's like, oh yeah, you said it better than I did in a lot less words. I'm like, yeah, that's because you're autistic. I wanted to say that. I didn't say that, but you know, it's just, but we have a system now with the way the education system is work, that someone who is not apt for a certain situation gets in that situation because we crutched them the whole way up to it. And it's like, you know, this guy might be great in a lab because he read a paper while we were sitting there talking about it. That's pretty damn fast. And he actually understood the words he read. Yeah. And had intelligent thoughts about it. But I was like, dude, social skills, some social skills.
There's actually that unsubscribed podcast I referenced, actually had a funny, if you have a twisted sense of humor like me, anecdote where one of the main hosts, his son is very autistic, and so they've raised a lot of money for a couple of different autism organizations, and he said that, I don't even remember how. Because they were talking about combat medics. They were talking about medics and taking medicine and stuff, and he said this is probably the first time where I understood what autism means, because he's just a little bit younger than us, but he's about our age, and that word has been thrown around a lot, and so much so that I think some of us were like, yeah, sure, whatever, because
which adds power to what I said, because you know my opinion on that it is a broadened spectrum.
Mhm.
You know, my son is considered autistic, and I'm like, he's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
to
just,
us, we were like, okay, unless you're Rain Man, you're not. No, it's whatever.
no, this
But
guy is closer to Rain Man. Yeah.
so this guy's son, and I think he said he was about 5 or 6 at this time. He was really sick, and he needed to take this medicine, and that was just one of his ticks. Is he hated taking medicine. It was like trying to get a dog to take medicine. We're like, and
Peanut butter, man. Peanut butter.
we had a dog, your namesake Sam, she would eat around it and then spit it out. And I'm like, how do you know it's there? I like stick it in a little piece of hot dog or whatever,
What?
stick it in a little piece of
I was about to
cheese,
say
and it
cheese.
spits
Yeah,
it out.
because you got to throw it.
Yeah.
If they throw it, they eat it faster. If you hand it
Yeah.
to them, they eat it slower.
Yeah. So the and so uh when they took him into the ER because he was so sick, in order to get the medicine to absorb quickly, they gave it to him rectally. Um, which for anyone who doesn't know, yeah, that's a thing. That's why there were articles not that long ago of frat boys stop sticking beer up your butt because that was actually a thing that was happening. And and so for this guy, Eli, the host, he was like, you know, man, that's not cool. That sucks. He was like, and he was trying to tell us, come on, you got to take your medicine. You got to take your medicine. No, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. If you don't take it, then I'm going to have to do it the other way. Okay. Wait, what? He's like, okay, you you want me to do it the other way? Yeah. Are you sure you don't want to just swallow the medicine? No, 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 no. I'm like, holy crap. Yeah, that would be eye-opening if, you're trying to deal with this 5 or 6 year olds. It's already really difficult to deal with. And now it's, oh, this individual would rather take medicine rectally rather than just swallowing it like normal. Oh, okay, yeah, there's something wrong here. There's something not normal here. I'm starting to get it now. And he said that is when he started to realize, oh, this is what autism is. Yeah, okay, I'm starting to get it now. And then that was kind of his journey on, okay, these are the things I have to watch out for. This isn't gonna be normal. This isn't gonna be like me growing up as a kid, of it's just the brain works differently with this individual, and you're gonna have to work around that and live with that and do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah, and that's really rough because we talk about CBT, behavioral therapy. It's like, okay, well, that's the answer to that kind of behavior typically, but does it work with this population? That kind of thing. And so I'm going to talk to this kid like before class, maybe next time, and just be like, hey, you're digging yourself a hole. Notice she never calls on you, and then when you speak out, she gets on you. You might have to play a little politics here, and I don't think he's going to get it. So I got to figure out a way to talk to him before the next class, because she's going to use that as the evidence that she needs for white men mansplaining over everything.
Is there a polite way to say, hey, have you been tested for being on the spectrum, without offending the guy if he is or if he isn't?
Maybe. I'll just do the regular, like he's a normal person talk and see how he reacts.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Well, that could prove interesting.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, I'm reading all these papers where I'm just like, what was my note here? Oh, this is Dunning, David Dunning. So everybody's heard of Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Oh, so this is actually the first paper of David Dunning's that I've actually read. And what I've noticed, which is one of the problems with the replication crisis, is he really likes to cite himself. He of his citations, he references himself a lot, and in his citations page, he is on there 5 times out of 20. So 1/4 of his citations for his paper is himself. That's like, I don't know. It's when you cite papers, you're looking for evidence that support your thought. your thought can't be from another one of your thoughts.
Mm.
You know, your thought when you're supporting your if it's one of your thoughts, you don't even have to cite yourself. You can just write it because you're not plagiarizing anybody if it's yourself.
It's a little
So,
weird.
yeah, so yeah, you're just kind of going through that. But where was the one? Oh, no, that's not it. There was one thought I had, and I'm trying to find it. Oh, yes. Okay. So the statement here in this paper. So this is the automaticity of social life. Yeah. So basically, all the things you do without thinking about it is what it's supposed to be, but it's not. The statement in the paper is caused. So the subtle priming of social stereotype of the elderly, which includes the notions that elderly are forgetful as well as physically slow and weak, caused college students to walk more slowly when leaving the experimental session. And my note on that was the exact studies that were called bullshit in the replication crisis. Okay, so we've got off to a good start here.
Oh boy.
Yeah, oh boy. And there was another one in the Dunning paper where they what did they do? Okay, so the methods of the experiment were they had a gift card for $25 or a gift card for $1, and you had to try to hit it with a beanbag, like you're playing cornhole or something. And their conclusion was people perceive things they want as closer than things that they don't care about. And so it reliably, so statistical significance, the people that saw the $25 gift card came up 9 inches short of the gift card, but the people who saw that there was no reward ended up hitting it most of the time. And they were like, see, they perceive it as closer. Is all about perception. And I'm like, maybe when there's something on the line, people just short arm stuff because they're being conservative. That's also another answer you can take from that exact same experiment. And that's actually usually the truth. Look at free throws in the NBA. When the game is on the line, how many people T-Rex the shot?
When poker was getting big on TV, how many free to play poker apps were there out there? And they were all worthless because nobody played poker like they would if they were playing with actual money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things that separates elite athletes from normal people is we T-Rex our game-winning shots. Elite athletes hit it on the nose. And it's just like, yeah, because you become more conservative in your movement when there's more stakes. It's not about it looks closer to me. It's about I'm trying to be more careful, so therefore I hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
Which, what we know from real life is hesitation can end up with you dying. But
if you hesitate, you will meditate in a horizontal position.
Where's that from?
I think it's a Bruce Lee quote.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to look that up because it has to be in Tao of Jay Kundo probably. But
well, we've rambled and yelled at the clouds long enough. So you got a closing thought?
No, my closing thought is we will follow this up when the semester's over and see if I have another A or I fail a class because you don't have much wiggle room in grad school because you never know what your grade is going to be when everything's discussion based until the end. Oh, this is one thing. Okay, so 30% of my grade is participation in class. How am I supposed to get a good participation grade when you never call on me?
And keeps getting told to shut up.
And keep getting told, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because, okay, so this is another observation. I'm actually tallying these things. If me, other white dude, and ambiguously, possibly Hispanic dude raise his hand, and one female of color raise their hand, she calls on the female of color every time, despite how many times that person has answered. There was one person that was called on 6 times.
You should start keeping a chart.
No, I am.
Okay.
That's what I
Oh,
said.
you
I've been
already are?
tallying. Yeah, I've already been
Oh, I thought
tallying.
you were just doing a mental tally. No, you're actually writing it down.
No,
That's
I am
great.
actually writing it down. No, yeah, yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
Incidentally, that was Ed Parker, the Kimpo guy. Ed
Oh,
Parker's
okay. Yeah,
Kimpo.
yeah, yeah.
So I must have gotten that from Sifu Leos.
But wasn't Ed Parker a student of Bruce Lee?
Can't remember. I don't think so.
Yeah. Don't quote on any of us on any of that. We're just speculating, but no, I have been tallying the count. So
it'll be interesting to see where we are at the midway point. All right. Well, we will see y'all, speaking of midway through the week, Wednesday, for our new Wheel of Time, and we'll see how far we can get. I'd like to get a good chunk through because first or second week of October, I'm going to be gone on vacation for a couple of weeks. So I'm really hoping we can get through before that point. Because it'd be nice to make it all the way through.
I can't imagine we have more than 5 episodes. But yeah, no, this is going to be good because it actually, I read probably 100 pages of Wheel of Time after class last Tuesday. And it actually was a relative relief because after that damn stupid class, damn stupid Sanderson wasn't as bad.
Which is saying something for, if you haven't watched it yet, for how much we ranted and raved about, because there were 2 significant Matt chapters there and some Egwene and Gawain, so which is always fun. So yeah, there's
Maybe
some
that's why I spoke so
there.
highly of Gawain the last time. Yeah, it was better than the awful I just got done with. So
all right, well, we'll see how awful it is next time, because I can't even remember what's next, but we'll get through as much as we can.
All right, later guys and gals.